So no matter what, if somebody hangs up, then you cannot get their audio back.
This is the pastor.
And this is the pastor's brother, Jared.
I'm about to hang up because the best guest that's ever been on is pissed.
And this is the pastor with no answer.
Never had a clue. Never had one answer. Have you ever had any answers?
No.
You've never had what should we have for dinner?
I have no idea.
Damn.
I don't know what to say.
In fact, I just asked Joey how he's celebrating his anniversary. He's like, I don't know.
Well, I wanted to ask y'all, like, how do your wives handle anniversaries? Toby, if I had to guess, Jessica would just prefer you not to spend much money, right?
Yeah, we just don't. I don't know if we were talking about this the other night because I don't know if we put a lot of stock in anniversaries. Maybe we should. Like, even like Christmas and stuff like that, just like getting each other stuff, it feels a little contrived to us. Like it's just forced upon us. Well, this is your anniversary, so you're supposed to do something really amazing. But I have to admit, there's sometimes where I feel like, I really should do something. You know what I mean? So I don't know. But she doesn't really care. Like it just wouldn't matter. Like if our anniversary was on a certain day and we didn't celebrate it for 2 weeks before or after, she'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm definitely at a spot right now at 243 on my anniversary where I have
That's your weight, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have zero planned, and sometimes I'm on fire, man. I have something I'm working on a month in advance, but it's been a crazy summer, and Priscilla will not be upset. She won't be hurt or anything, but she would definitely, in my opinion, be happier. Like there would be something to me having planned ahead and, give her something that's really sweet and thoughtful or have a really neat date planned, but she's not going to be upset. Jared, how about Sarah?
Sarah's like so hands off. She could care less about birthday, Christmas, or anniversary.
Well, you guys don't have a good marriage, so.
But it's funny. Like I don't even buy her gifts anymore because every gift I buy her gets taken back. So that's Christmas, birthday,
exact same here.
They get taken back.
They get taken back. Yeah, I give up, man. So basically, Sarah will buy her own gifts and then she'll say thank you, and I was like, all right, cool. So that's how it works.
I've just decided that when Jess says she likes something, I just encourage her to get it.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she likes this one store that we go to. What is it called? Anyway, it's like a woman store, I guess is what I'll call it. But it has women products. But she just likes it, and I'm like, that's cool. That makes me feel like we're going to spend money wisely anyway. Like that's what she really wants. I don't know. Like she just likes being in there and sometimes buying stuff. So I would prefer just to encourage her. Hey, it's okay. Go ahead and buy that. It doesn't matter if it's $100 because later, whatever. That it's just way easier. Because you're exactly right. There's been so many presents where I bought and you could just immediately see the look on her face. You're like, oh, great.
Yep.
Oh, I know. I've messed up so many times. Now, Priscilla, there's definitely a romantic part of her where she wants me to listen and pick up clues and like that sort of thing. And yeah, I do well sometimes, but yeah.
I actually have a funny bit on my podcast, Unstoppable Badass, that's coming out soon. I was working on it yesterday, where women, they do like a variety of presents, but they would never think to give the guy the present that he wants, which is sex. So that's like, I was like, it would be there would never be, my face would only be happy and ecstatic and joyous if I was like, Jess, I didn't think, I was talking to the guy, you got me sex. Awesome.
For sure. All right. Well, I had a little bit planned for this episode, and we will have that later on in the podcast, but I thought we would bring Toby on here because I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the comments that were coming from our episode last week. A lot of people have listened to it. A lot of people have a good bit of thoughts as far as Godless is concerned. Some people are a little pissed that we even talked about it after the fact, but I just literally 30 minutes ago went and listened to Metal Sucks podcast, and him and what's his co-host, Toby, do you know? I forgot. Chuck something. So Godless and Chuck, they talked about his appearance on the podcast, and I have to say that I'm actually taken back, and I've lost a little respect for Godless. Now, y'all know me. I always say this, and I don't think people believe me, but I mean it when I say I like people. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot for me to like people. I still like Godless, but I thought there was some balance that he had that he does not have. Like, he literally called, and he was being serious. He called Chip and Jared very stupid people. When you talk to slow people, you have to figure out some patience, and I just didn't have it. I mean, it was extremely belittling. And Toby, I think when he came on the Bad Christian podcast a couple of times, actually, that's just not the point of our podcast, is to go into all of that and, argue a little bit and debate. And so I don't think I saw that side of him. But every time he's come on Pastor with No Answers, I've like, oh, wow, that's kind of jerky. Oh, whoa, he took that one kind of far. And so this last podcast, when he just blew up at Chip and then ended up leaving the phone call, and then on his podcast really saying some pretty disparaging things, I'm just a little bit surprised.
Like, what did he say on his podcast? Like, can you allude to that?
Well, I just said you weren't listening, I guess. And that's okay, Toby. That's okay. He basically called Jared and Chip very slow and stupid.
Oh, I see. I didn't hear you say that. Sorry. I didn't hear you say that. You're right.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So here's the thing. I do have some critical feedback for me and Jared and Chip, but I asked Toby to listen to the beginning of that podcast of ours last week. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think about, all right, so let me read one comment that someone said. He said, I was disheartened by the latest podcast episode, and this guy's very much so. He's not emailing me just to talk shit and be mean. Like, he's like, man, I love you guys, I'm still listening. But he said, I respect the fact that you pulled Godless's portion of the debate from the episode. In fact, that was the right move in my opinion. My issue is that you didn't pull the discussion of the debate. All the audience gets to hear is the conjecture about what Godless may or may not have been thinking. He was not on air to defend himself. Again, I'm not criticizing. What's that?
It's his choice.
Right. Again, I'm not criticizing or trying to cast the show in a bad light. I do think it was an error in judgment. Without hearing the conversation, how could we make an informed decision about whether your assertions about his potential thought process were correct or not? Collectively, if we care about Godless's soul, the discussion or breakdown thereof shouldn't really even matter. Since he's an atheist, we would argue that his assertions are categorically false. Maybe we could have given him a pass on his having a bad attitude. I hope that we can hear his side of the story someday. Now, first of all, I'll just say to this guy, you try throwing a whole podcast episode away where you're spending your time getting people together, talking and everything, and then you're like, well, shit, we got to get rid of this one altogether. And that represents a whole week of putting an episode out. But Toby, what's your take on all of this? How fair or unfair did you think Chip, Jared, and myself were after the fact? Should we have aired it? Yada, yada, yada. And I don't know why I just said yada, 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 because I hate that. So
yeah, I hate it too. I'm hanging up. Well, here's what I thought after listening to it. First of all, he agreed to come on the show, and then he hung up. So there was still a show. So I would never, you cannot, although it is very valuable information to hear from fans of their show, what they think, you can't judge your decisions based on that.
Totally. This is interesting for me. Like, I don't. Yeah.
So, and then also Godless went on his podcast and talked about it without y'all. So, you know what I mean? Like that, because he has a podcast to do and it's great entertainment. So I commend him for doing that as well. Like, he got an episode out for his podcast talking about you guys. And so I think that's totally fine. I would say, always, it just is what it is. I mean, we have fought tooth and nail with people on the Bad Christian podcast that said, oh yeah, we're not going to let you air that. And we're like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, that's just, it's unfair to spend and waste our time. You're right. This is a lot of time and effort and sweat and tears that goes into making these things and getting them out. And sometimes you only have a certain amount of time, so there isn't another episode. And I think that's doing a disservice to your fans anyway by not really telling them the truth. Like, if y'all would have just said, okay, let's just talk about Nephilim. Right. That would have been dumb. That would have been not the truth. So I think what you did was the truth and totally fine, and proven by that's what Godless did too. He talked about it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, what I would say is, I think, honestly, it's just not that big of a deal. I think he was probably, like you said, he was in another country or something, and I think he felt ganged up on which is probably, I mean, he did, and Jared even said this on the podcast. I can see where he was defensive coming on a Christian podcast. So, I mean, I can see he was just defensive and angry. So he lashed out and angry. I don't think he's really that mad. I bet maybe he even wishes he would have done it a little differently. But also, it's just, the best thing in the world would have been if y'all wouldn't have lost the audio. That would have just been great. Then everybody would have heard it and it would have been fine. So, but that isn't the case. It just didn't happen.
Well, and that's behind the scenes a secret, not anymore, and that's totally fine. So basically, he wanted to pull the audio, and I actually emailed him. I said, "Hey, you didn't happen to record that audio because basically the program we're using, if he hangs up, we lose it. So we need to do a Skype backup for now on. But I would say that we wouldn't have played it if he didn't want us to, which he did not. He said, I don't want y'all to air that, which I thought was interesting too. Like, that just doesn't seem characteristic of him at all to say, don't play that.
Well, I mean, it probably makes him look bad. Like if he just got mad and was upset, that he's probably just natural human instinct not to do it. But honestly, I just don't know if it's that big of a deal. Like, I think for him, he probably did feel a little overwhelmed and outmanned. There's 3 Christians.
Well, let me give you some.
And so he felt that way, and I mean that's kind of normal. I can see that. Like I feel like sometimes I lose my mind at the church. Like I feel like I'm like Godless in some ways against the church too. When I see just ridiculous things happen, I'm going, "Are you crazy? I can't believe." You know my outbursts that I've had. So I don't know if it was that much different, but I didn't hear it.
Yeah. Well, let me give just some context because I mean I agree. Maybe coming on originally, there's some intimidation there. But here's some things that he said on Metal Sucks, Jared. I think you'll be pretty blown away by this. He actually said, man, when it was 3-1 and basically all of them started coming after me, dude, he basically got on there and immediately said, Chip, what do you think as far as creationism is concerned? Because I need to figure out who I'm talking to. And so basically Godless started the conversation. No one went after him about anything. So there were even some inaccuracies with how he, portrayed the whole conversation to begin with. Like he made himself feel or he portrayed himself as attacked. And I was like, oh my gosh, like he actually came out on the offense attacking us. So like it's
so you're saying on his podcast he was portraying it like we were attacking him?
That's basically what he said. He said it was he said it was 3 against 1. He said I had no idea that there was even going to be 2 theists in addition to the host, and I was like,
that's how it was the first time.
Yeah, and we totally told him that was so. It's interesting. I definitely Godless is now a mystery to me. Like I'm like, what is this guy? Where's he coming from? I thought I was a pretty good judge of character, like meeting someone for the first time, but I think I've gotten it wrong, and not even necessarily in a bad way. Like I thought he was better than what he is, but he's definitely more of a mystery to me. All right, so let me go through a handful of things that we have an atheist that interacts a lot on a page that was created that I didn't even create. It's called Pastor with No Answers discussion page, and there's a lot of atheists on there that talk on there and bring up really good points, and I think that's pretty cool. One guy actually quoted a lot of things that were said, maybe some from Jared, but I think most of these were Chip's. And at the time when these were being said, some of them I didn't even think, but yeah, I would say I disagree with some of these statements as well, but some of them I agree. I want to throw these out to y'all. One of them was when Godless hung up the phone, Chip said that validates the ruggedness of our beliefs and the fragility of his. I don't think there's any correlation with him hanging up and that validating our faith. Do you guys get that?
No, I was kind of thinking that both parties are going to be very dogmatic about what we believe.
Yeah.
So I think that might show like frustration on his part and realizing that whatever was said was not going to be received well. So I think it was more frustration than anything else. Yeah. But I don't think it's fragility on his part. No.
Yeah.
I would not agree with that.
How about this one, Toby? If you have to fight that hard to defend what you believe, deep down you probably don't believe it.
No, I guess I don't totally go there either, because I mean, there's Christians that'll fight so they would die in honor of their God, and spreading the gospel and stuff like that. So I don't think that's true. I honestly really don't even think this is an atheist or Christian question. I think it's just a dude that kind of just felt outnumbered and upset, and then it just didn't go well. You know what I mean? Like I really don't think this is anything to do with his atheism. It probably feels more like I think he does think he was outnumbered and y'all were bullying him. Right now, maybe that might even be wrong, but that is what he actually thinks.
Maybe then, but for him to call Chip and I stupid on his podcast, that is an atheism Christianity thing. Like, he doesn't respect our position, essentially.
Well, but don't you think that's still? I think that's I don't think that's still atheism in Christianity. I think that's a personal attack. I think he actually thinks. I don't really believe he thinks you're stupid. I think that he is mad, and that's just what you say when you're mad.
Well, maybe, but I would think he would say that Christians who believe in creationism are stupid.
Yeah, you might be right about that. You might be right about that, but at the same time, I mean, I would say that if you don't, you might be stupid or something. Like, it doesn't really carry much weight. It just sounds like an emotional reaction more than a well thought out scientific rebuke of y'all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but an emotional, like 2 or 3 days after the fact. I mean, he's harboring a lot of emotion then. If it's still
or he's just like making a kick-ass podcast. It's like milking it for all it can be. I was outnumbered, man. There was Christians coming from every side. It was unbelievable. Like that. I mean, that's kind of what you do sometimes.
That makes sense. So, Toby, you're kind of saying that really for him it was anger at the moment and then making a good podcast 3 days later or 4 days later.
Right. Like just kind of rehash it, get yourself a little fired up, and then, you know, just say all that stuff, because also he knows his audience. And of course they're going to say stupid Christians and all that. Right. I mean, I think like Joey is pretty critical when he finds out something. He almost thinks that is a serious part of you, like a cornerstone or a block of who you are. Like, Joey has told me many times, like, I'm 40 now, and I would say in the last 3 years, Joey will say, but you're like this. But that was, I was like that maybe when I was 20, like 20 years old. And I'm like, you have to understand that people change and stuff. And so, I mean, like, I don't think that Godless is this big mystery. He literally was just a little mad. And he's like, well, hell, I do a podcast. And okay. I mean, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he comes back on at some point, because he's a smart guy and might go, hey, I can milk this again. There's 2 more episodes here, and so.
That is really funny, because I still am like, I think you and I look at people differently, because I do see how that sounds so funny. He's a mystery, and you're just like, oh, he's just mad. But I'm like, no, I don't know how he responded. Now it just kind of throws me for a loop. This is interesting.
So Joe, you're probably maybe assuming he'd be more tolerant of other perspectives and other opinions.
For sure. Like the first time I talked to him, I was like, this dude is cool as hell. Like, he's funny, he's well-spoken, which I still think both of those things. And, wow, this is a guy we could really have some cool conversations with. He gets a little annoyed at what we're saying. Maybe he does think we're a little stupid, but it's good conversation. But every time he came on Pastor with No Answers, I was like, wow, this guy's kind of being an asshole. So it's super interesting. All right, last question, then we'll let Toby go here. Jared, I think you said debating an atheist never works because we look at the same evidence from different perspectives. Go into that a little deeper.
Well, it all goes back to the idea of paradigms. If you're buying into a worldview or a paradigm, you interpret evidence in a certain way. And so as Christians, we interpret evidence in a certain way. And then someone who believes and buys into an atheistic, materialistic worldview, they're going to interpret the same evidence in a totally different way that makes more sense in their worldview.
And so you're not even saying there's anything wrong with that?
Well, I think that the interpretation can be wrong. So, I mean, I clearly believe atheism is wrong, right? But I think he's being logically consistent by interpreting evidence in an atheistic way.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it's very fruitful to have these kind of discussions, or let me rephrase that, to have these kinds of debates. But I think a good, open-minded, tolerant, humble conversation is always cool. But debating, I've given up on that a long time ago with atheists.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. It just gets really cyclical, and it just comes, and then you just can't get out of it. And it just, because if you are actually even a hair passionate about what you believe, then you're not going. Nobody's really going to win you over. And if they could, then you just see it way more. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think the atheist side is they are, no matter what, completely outnumbered by at least spirituality in general. You know what I mean? Like atheists are a very, very small minority. And so I think they probably feel pressure all the time. Like everywhere, I think they probably see some type of spiritual guide or whatever, not even just Christianity, everywhere. And they think it's completely foolish that you would believe in something like that. And so, and I think they just hear it from all sides. So they probably are a little bit on the defensive, maybe from the get-go, more than a Christian would, because we're in the majority.
Yeah.
But I do think, though, with a lot of, I hate generalizing, but I get the sense that a lot of academic atheists or intellectual atheists, they do have an air of superiority about them, where they look down on people who are not atheists.
I think I can agree with you there. And I'd like to clarify that statement. I don't think it's all, I wouldn't say, but I do feel that there is a lesser brain quality for somebody that would believe that God directs their life or their steps even. You know what I mean? Like that you would go, Lord, please help my daughter with cancer or something like that. There is I think an intellectual thing that says, wait a minute, I don't have to, the Ayn Rand kind of thing. I'm self-made man. I am my own being and I dictate my whole life. If something happens, then I will handle that. And, and I do feel that way, because also I think they think there is no way to win because we can weasel out anything. Well, that's what God wanted. God wanted my wife to die. Well, that's what God wanted. He wanted me to win the lottery or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So I think they feel that frustration because there is no way to really get the upper hand on somebody who's spiritual, because you can always find it out with, well, that's God directed it. God's in control. He wanted this to happen, no matter what.
Yeah.
So, Toby, last thing for you. You definitely know Chip and you've had more interactions with him than Jared. Were you surprised of his approach? Like, if you had to guess how that would have played out when Godless did what he did, and you didn't get the luxury of hearing how Godless handled it, but are you surprised that Chip just kind of was just like, dude, I don't play that sort of thing, kind of taking a tough guy attitude, which was genuine. He wasn't being a faker, but were you surprised about that?
No, I thought it probably seemed about right. Like, I think that I know Chip, and that is Chip being him totally himself. Like, no, I'm not going to do this because you are trying to bully me in a certain ways. That's the way Chip felt too. Right. Chip felt bullied, and it was almost just like he was Anthony Hopkins from Legends of the Fall. Screw him, like sometimes this is a guy thing too, man. We have a little bit of testosterone, and there's sometimes you're just like, screw it. This might not even be right, but no, I'm not going here with you. You're treating me or doing something like this, and I might be acting wrong, but I'm riding it. And so I don't really think it was that big of a deal. The big bad part here was that Godless would hang up. Like, any type of debate or argument or anything, you can't give up that, because then it does hurt the podcast. It does hurt what you're trying to do. It hurt what he's trying to do overall, in a sense of he could have really made some great points and won some people listening to y'all's podcast over to his side. But by hanging up, it's just nothing. There is no anything. So I think that if you let your anger get that much of you, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was probably my fault, because before the podcast, I was saying, Chip, be careful, watch out, because, Godless can get pretty heated. So I may have, caused Chip to be really like overly defensive or overly argumentative. I don't know. I hope I didn't, but maybe I did add some fuel to the fire. I don't know.
Anthony Hopkins or Robert De Niro, who's more talented?
De Niro, probably.
All right,
I'd say De Niro too.
De Niro, me too. Me too. Toby, you've been an unstoppable badass of a guest.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. When's the first episode going to hit? And I did listen to the first one. I really like it. Hey, I am curious, and we can edit this if this is giving something away that you don't want to. But did you really get your kids to cuss, or how did you play that trickery? Is there trickery there?
No comment.
Toby Morrell, folks, Unstoppable Badass, coming out when?
Soon. Very soon.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Toby.
Hey, if I hang up, are y'all going to lose my audio?
Yes. All right, now it's time for Christians Say the Darndest Things. We're going to tackle some sayings and teachings or formulaic, convenient phrases that we as Christians often say without even thinking about how wrong or misleading these things can be. We say these things for many reasons. Let me just name a few. One, we're taught this, and we truly believe what we just said is correct or helpful. Secondly, we're lazy and we don't want to think a little deeper. The stuff we're saying isn't right, but we don't want to think about it. It's just always easier to say God's in control. Put our stamp on that, move on with our business. That has to make somebody feel better, right? A third reason we're lazy and we just don't want to think about how our statements affect others. This is an example. Sometimes we could be totally right with what we're saying, but what we're saying just isn't helpful. So my objective for this episode is to simply make the listener think. I don't want to explain these sealed tight explanations as to why they're right or wrong necessarily. For one, I personally can be wrong, so I don't want you to just run with what I'm saying. I want you to think. So I'll be throwing some personal reflections out there, potential implications of what these statements can mean to other people, and you know what? Do some guesswork as to why people say this stuff in the first place. So let's dive right in. The first statement is in regards to praying. Have you ever heard someone say, "Be careful what you ask for"? I have, and I thought they were kidding. This person's been a Christian way longer than me, the person that I heard say this, and she actually said, "Be careful what you ask for," and was serious. And this is basically what she's saying is there's power in your words to God, and you need to be careful what you ask him for because he may answer your prayer regardless of how good it is for you or whether your words were connected to your heart. Doesn't matter. You said the magic words. He answered, "Be careful." So the implications of this is simply outrageous. Think about it. What if my daughter flunks a test and says, "Dad, kill me now"? What if my son wants to try and eat the whole cheesecake and he asks me if that's cool? What if my other son, who is 4, wants to try to swim across a lake? It looks fun. It appears to be something that he can do. But I know in actuality that he would get tuckered out within 2 minutes. And, oh, yeah, that lake is infested with alligators. Now, what if there is persuasive power in their requests that compel me to answer in their favor? Okay, well, first of all, I kill my daughter. I let my son eat a whole cheesecake. And then my other son chances getting eaten by a freaking alligator. So this is crazy. Joey Svensson, am a loving father that's smarter than my kids, and I'm not going to do something just because of their words. I think this is like partly due, the reason why some people actually believe, hey, be careful what you ask God for. I think it has to do with the whole in Jesus' name phenomenon. I call it a phenomenon because people actually use it like it's abracadabra. Hey, if I say in Jesus' name, my prayer is validated and empowered, and it's going to happen. Now, that's not what in Jesus' name means at all. He meant something more along the lines of, hey, ask anything that is within my desire for you, and I'll do it. Like in my name, something that I would approve of. God's a personal God. He can actually think. There's no such thing as just saying something and it's bad for you, but God does it anyway because you asked for this. You said a stupid prayer. My next one, 2 more. Here it goes. God helps those who help themselves. Now, this is a statement that a lot of preachers knock. They scoff at, pointing out that it's not anywhere in the Bible. And they're right, it's not. But is this statement really wrong? I mean, I agree there's nothing we can do to save ourselves from this fallen world or from the trappings of sin. So, like spiritual implications, sure, there's not a whole lot we can do to help ourselves. But isn't there some very practical truth to this? I mean, let me break it down this way. Is God going to step in and help the alcoholic that has no desire to change? Maybe so. And I'm sure it's happened in the past. But in my experience, God typically helps people that want to change and they seek this change out. People that are also willing to do some hard work. So let's take the person that racks up credit card debt. If they keep spending, they aren't helping themselves, and God isn't going to step in and help. If they recognize their foolish spending and they want to use money differently, I suspect it's in God's character to step in and help them make good decisions and all that stuff. So God helps those who help themselves. Maybe there's some truth to that. It's just not in the second book of Abraham, chapter 5, verse 6. Third statement, lastly, and this one's my favorite, getting your hands dirty. This is actually said in regards to serving other people. So when we serve other people, we are getting our hands dirty. So, hey, did you hear about Rick Warren going to that soup kitchen? That's so cool, man. After writing that book and making millions of dollars, he still gets his hands filthy. This is one of those statements that I have so many thoughts to explore. I just can't even go in all these directions, but I'll discuss some. Number one, there's definitely a shortage of serving in the church. We do need to do more, Joey included, but calling it get your hands dirty. So serving typically involves other people, right? When we serve, we're serving other people. Are these people dirty? We're getting ourselves dirty by helping these people. Do we really want to use, so we do need to serve more, but do we really want to use language in a way that seems to highlight just how spoiled we are and express that this being spoiled is an admirable thing? I mean, this is me. I am spoiled. I have all of my needs and most of my wants, honestly. But when we say getting our hands dirty, it's like highlighting this. Like, this is a good thing that I have all this and I'm helping these other people. Can you imagine Jesus getting up in the morning? The disciples say, "Hey, what are we going to do today, Jesus?" And Jesus turns to them and said, "Fellas, we're getting our hands dirty today, man. We're going to feed 5,000 people. I'm going to heal a blind person. I'm going to let a dirty old woman touch the hem of my garment. It's getting dirty time today, man." So anyway, I think this is a tough one because from the standpoint that getting your hands dirty, it implies that this isn't a normal thing that we do. And I think this is true. Christians, we don't serve enough. So we call it getting our hands dirty because this isn't something that we normally do. This isn't a part of our regular flow of life. But we shouldn't be okay with this. When we say getting our hands dirty, it's almost like an admission to, and it's okay that this is a rarity, but we actually do need to be serving more. We don't need to have this attitude of, "Oh, you're so admirable to get your hands dirty once in a while." No, it should be the norm. We just shouldn't be calling it getting our hands dirty. So, like, what if we turned the table and said, every time I'm self-centered and selfish, I'm getting my hands dirty. This is dirty, man. I'm self-centered. I'm selfish. I'm getting my freaking hands dirty, and I need to do something about it. Some Dial soap or something. All right, that's all, folks. Hope you enjoyed this segment of Pastor with No Answers. Christians say the darndest things. All right, got a handful of things I want to tell you about. First of all, thanks for listening to this podcast. Go to pastorwithnoanswers.com if you want to contribute, connect with us on Facebook, or Twitter. So some episodes that are coming up we're pretty excited about. We've got biblical inerrancy defended for once and not attacked. Chris Date's coming on from the Rethinking Hell podcast. He's going to give a pitch of why the Bible is inerrant. We've got a conversation coming up with Chip Judd and country boy Ryan Amick to talk about the book of Job, pain and suffering. And man, Chip's got some good thoughts on the book of Job that I've never thought about before. We got Press and Sprinkle coming to talk about how the church needs to change. We got a hip-hop episode coming up, part 1 and a part 2 with Cookbook, Derek Minor, Propaganda, Pigeon John, and we also have an episode coming up to where I get to catch up with an old friend of mine. We were in youth group together. He was like king of the youth group, with spirituality, went off to college, became gay. And I finally get to catch up with him to kind of hear his story, what was going on behind the scenes, how the church kind of shunned him, and where he's at today. Lots of good stuff coming up. Thanks for listening. See you next week.